So today we take a look at motherboard problems, whether you think your motherboard is faulty or dead, and this is part 3 of my Troubleshoot series. Coming up, roll the intro. Hey Team Techs and welcome, this is Ash from My Tech, helping you go from newbie to techie. So if you've just stumbled on this video, this is part 3 of my Troubleshoot series. In the introduction, part 1 and part 2, I talk about the computer turning on sequence and also 10 main components of any computer device, and understanding them will help you to identify and fix your problem a lot more easily. Also, part 1 and part 2 we talk about the issue with power and power supply and the desktop case altogether, and also the power switch and the power cable. So you should really go and watch these videos before you come to this one, unless you're really tech savvy, because I will be referring to them. There are also 2 standalone videos I've done. One is about an advanced tutorial on how to troubleshoot a power supply using a digital multimeter, and the other one is breadboarding a motherboard, meaning how to take a motherboard out of a desktop case, and it's an important part of troubleshooting. So if you don't know how to do these, go check them out, links above in the card or below in the description. Right, now that's out of the way, I'm going to leave this uncut in one shot and hopefully unedited, because I want you to experience a first hands-on troubleshooting in real time. This motherboard is faulty and I've just done 3 tests, so I am confident that this is faulty and I'm going to show you. However, I'm going to do this in reverse. I'm first going to show you the tests in a working motherboard, and then we're going to switch the components to this one to see the difference. All right, so follow me while I try to adjust myself. If you want to know, this is the Gigabyte GA73VM-S2. It's an LGA775 socket from Intel. Now I'm going to leave this uncut, and if you want to skip ahead to certain parts where I actually transfer the components, you can do so, but I'm going to leave it. It's going to be fun and also a lot easier for me to edit later. Now, what you can see down there is on the far right, that's the motherboard that's faulty, and this one is an Asus, and let me zoom that in. It's an Asus, sorry, it's upside down, but you get the idea. It's a P5W DH Deluxe Digi-Home. Okay, now they're both LGA socket 775. So what we got hooked up is a basic system. There's no hard drive in there right now. Okay, there is a keyboard, mouse, a power supply from EVGA 430 watt. There's an old graphics card. This is the GTS 450. Underneath there's a processor, which is the Intel dual core E6550 at 2.33 gigahertz, and there's also 2 sticks of RAM, and I believe this is DDR2. Could be 2 gigabyte or 4 gigabyte. I can't be sure at this stage, but that's beside the point. The exact specs is not important. The important thing is we've got a minimum system to check whether this computer is going to post when we turn it on. Now, I've just done the test 3 times, like I said, so it should post unless it's dead between the time I've done the test and the time I'm filming this video. Now, what I've got it hooked up is a VGA cable here to this BenQ monitor, and I've also got a switch, and one thing I forgot to put, I'm going to put a speaker cable in there so we can hear the beep when it turns on. Hopefully. Right, and we're all set. Let's press this bad boy on and turn the switch on the power supply, and we've got fan spinning on the CPU, fan spinning on the GPU. Obviously the power supply is spinning. Now let's hear out for the beep, hopefully. Right, just heard the beep, so we should see something on the screen. There we go. P5WDH Deluxe. Right, okay, it says CMOS checksum bad, that's not a problem, that's to do with the battery. And it says press F1 to run setup, and that's because I've just changed the processor. Like I said, I've done this before, so that's why it's giving me these. And let's go to the CPU, and as you can see, there is the 2333 megahertz. This is an Intel processor, right? And we've got 4 kilobyte of cache. And what else we've got? Let's check the chipset. Do we need the chipset? We don't need the chipset. You get the idea. But at least this is booting. Now, it posted, and remember, refer back to my video about the computer turning on sequence. So we know that the motherboard, everything else is working fine. Now, it's not going to boot up into Windows or Linux or whatever, Mac, because we haven't attached a hard disk drive. But assuming your hard disk drive and your operating system is fine, the next step would be for it to boot into that operating system. Okay, I'm going to off this now, and I'm going to leave this uncut. If you don't want to watch me transferring these components, feel free to check the timestamps below. And I'm going to be transferring everything. Now the idea is to use the same devices and components. So we're going to leave the monitor, power supply, cooler, processor, RAM, graphics card, and even the two cables, the speaker cable and the power switch cable. We're going to take all of this off and transfer to this other board there. Because I've just done the test, it's not working, but I'll show you the symptoms. So this is kind of a reverse of what I've done. Okay, and let's do this. Okay, best thing to do first, discharge with the power supply off, discharge the electrical build-up by pressing and holding the power switch for at least 15 seconds. And there's no right or wrong way of, you know, undoing all these components. But I'm going to start with just taking the main 24 plug off, and I'm going to take the CPU plug off, right? And the graphics one, might as well just do the mouse and keyboard as well. I'm also going to take off the graphics card, if I can get my hands on it. I'm going to leave the VGA cable because I'm probably going to use it again. Right. And the RAM, put that on the side. Right. I'm also now going to take off the cooler and the processor. Now feel free to use a manual screwdriver. I'm confident with this. Unscrewing or screwing these things, always diagonal best at first. Right, and don't forget the plug, the 3-pin plug. Okay, cool. Now here's the CPU. So just gonna open the latch and take it out. There we go. Messed this up. All right. Okay. So we're gonna also unplug the speaker cable and the power switch. Okay. On this one, we had an LED bulb which was turning on green. But I'm going to put this to the side. And we'll bring in the faulty motherboard, in my opinion. Now, guys, I'm not going to bother reapplying thermal paste. It's not dangerous. This is just for testing purpose. So don't scream and don't get scared. Okay? And I'm going to give you my thoughts afterwards. Like I said, if you want to skip this part, if you've never seen a guy putting parts together, you can skip this part. I'll just mess this up. The arrow is the wrong orientation. There you go. Back and secure that. Let's get the cooler back on. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way of doing this, but usually, you know, for putting a build together, you start with the CPU and the cooler. And diagonal. Okay, I've never done this live, one shot, so I'm hoping I won't mess it up. Maybe I should have timed myself. There you go. And don't forget to plug in the 3-pin plug to the CPU. Fan, right. I'm gonna stick the 2 RAM sticks in there. I'm sure you don't want to see me do that, do you? Well, you know, enjoy. Oh yeah! This thing used to hurt me so much before. It's a lot easier to work outside of a case, obviously. Right. Next, I'm going to put the graphics card. You don't have to do it in that order, but that's what I'm choosing. There we go. The 24-pin main ATX power supply plug. The 4-pin processor, where are you? There you go, for the CPU, 4-pin in there. And the graphics card PCI plug, there we go. And couple of things. We're going to put the speaker cable in there. And look for the power switch to plug in the power cable. And I think it's this one. Right. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to plug in the mouse and the keyboard just in case we need to get into the BIOS, but I know we can't because this motherboard is dead. All right, so let me just check that. So yeah, okay, so that wasn't too bad. All right, then, so turn the power switch on, and we're gonna turn the whole thing on. There you go. Fan spinning, GPU fan spinning. Let's wait out for the speaker cable to give us any beep. We can wait as long as you want, but I have done this test and no beep is coming from the speaker cable and nothing on the display. Right? So what we've done, we've taken every component from this board and replaced it into this one. But this was actually in a desktop case and it wasn't giving me any display. And so I thought it might be faulty or dead, and I have confirmed it. I've done this test 3 times, but this is now a reverse process. I was going to show you from here to the other board there, but unfortunately the footage got damaged. So, but I thought, you know, this might be okay. Of course, after I finish this, I will test these components again. I will put them back into this board just to make sure that they are still working and we did not do a wrong test. Right. But guys, we could wait here all day, but there will be no beep, there will be nothing on display because this motherboard, there's a fault on it or it's dead. Okay, now I'm gonna sit back and give you my last thoughts, and I'm leaving this uncut, hopefully. I've never done this, but you know, feel free to skip ahead, check out the timestamps. Alrighty then, now hopefully I'm in focus. Oh gosh, this spot is horrible. I need a better tripod. Right, lights, fabulous, coolio. Got a bit of notes. I'm going to refer to this. I'm going to do my last thoughts. Let me just off this here, okay, for a minute. Okay. Right, so on this particular board that we just tested, there was no LED bulb present on it. And that's difficult because we don't know whether it's getting power or not, right? Some boards will have that, so you got to remember that. Now, the fact that the fans on the processor cooler was spinning and the graphics card was spinning, you may think that, you know, the motherboard must be okay because these things are clearly giving signs of life. That's not true, because what it means is that the power supply was delivering the correct voltage to the CPU and the fan, or at least was delivering some sort of voltage, so it was turning it on. However, there's a problem on the motherboard which is not allowing it to post. Remember the thing I talked about in my introduction? Okay, so the next thing is, like I said, there was no beep, so no post. Well, we know that the processor did not initialize the post process. So we know there's a problem somewhere. Okay, now, before you consider breadboarding the motherboard, there are a couple of things you need to do, some general troubleshooting. Things like, you know, the RAM, you can take them out and reseat them, or even swap them with different RAMs. What you can do also, check all your cables and all your plugs. Definitely you should test for the power supply and refer back to my video. You can either do the basic test with a clip, but better to do the advanced troubleshoot test with a digital multimeter like this one. Okay, and also the things like, because we're not getting a display, you should be checking whether the monitor is working correctly, including the cable attached to the monitor. And as far as the beep is concerned, you know, the speaker cable, make sure you've got a known working cable, otherwise the test would be pointless. Okay. Well, right, mouse and keyboard as well. I mean, sometimes a wrong input device could cause the computer not starting up. So make sure you test with different mouse and keyboard, right? Or even better, just unplug the mouse and keyboard. Unplug anything that's not necessary and leave what's essential, just to be able to turn the motherboard on to do the post process. Right. GPU, graphics card, yeah, also graphics card. Maybe the graphics card is dead, so you should also try and test for the graphics card. Okay, good deal. And last but not least, at this stage, it's nothing to do with your hard drive or your operating system, because we didn't even attach a hard drive to both of these motherboards, because we're just trying to see if the computer will post. That's it. So do remember that. Right. Now I'll give my last thoughts. The motherboard is the most difficult and the most annoying thing to troubleshoot when a computer is not functioning properly. And that's for two reasons. One, there are so many layers of devices and components attached to it. You will need to troubleshoot them one at a time to eliminate possibilities. And the second reason is because the accessibility of it, it's attached to the case usually, and you have to take everything off, and it's quite annoying. Right, there is a type of supposedly motherboard tester. I don't know the exact name of it, but they use ISA and PCI cards. So it's usually like a little card you insert into one of the PCI slots, right? And it's got 2 digits or 4 digits, and it's supposed to give you some codes, and you check against a manual, and then depending on the code, it will give you the exact problem on the motherboard. Problem with that, it was a bit of a kind of a publicity stunt, because what it's supposed to do doesn't always do. Most computer repair specialists that I've contacted, they say they don't like using them, it's a waste of time. And also many of them, especially coming from overseas, the user manual is terrible because the English translation is not good, not accurate, lots of typos, and you can't usually follow them. So it's really difficult. I don't advise you getting. I was considering getting a couple of them just to be able to keep and test, but if it's not reliable, there's no point. And I don't advise you to do this. So that leaves us to your best bet. So you as the end user, unlike me, you may not have the right board or the right other components to test. So what do? I can't give you a very last word advice on this, because it's going to be difficult. The motherboard is difficult to test and troubleshoot. What I can tell you is this: the speaker cable is going to be probably your best friend, but as long as you know it's working correctly. Like I mentioned before, do test on the power supply, make sure the right voltage is coming in, and make sure other components as much as possible is actually working. Whether the motherboard wants to turn on or not, you should do the breadboarding and then try to do the switch turning on, with connecting the positive and negative terminals on the motherboard pins itself, and that will determine whether it's turning on or not. But if you hear no beep, that's probably your best bet as an end user. Now you could use a multimeter and test the voltage at the back where the 24 pin connects, and you can test voltage in there and voltage at the back. but that will only give you the correct DC voltage at this level at least, but it will not give you other faults. The exact troubleshoot would be to get the schematics for this board and using a digital multimeter and be able to follow the designs, which is more troublesome than it sounds, because even professionals nowadays, they don't want to consider doing this. It's a waste of time, it costs too much money, and no one is willing to pay for that. Motherboards, especially desktop ones, are far too cheap to consider repairing. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. Mac devices, as far as I know, is still worth repairing for some companies, especially for Mac users, and also any computer which has sensitive information on there, and maybe the hard drive is locked to that motherboard, so they would try and repair instead of replacing. Right, a couple of other issues. RAM sticks can cause the motherboard not to start, but if you've got a speaker cable, then it might give you a different beep. However, if you've got no speaker cable, do bear in mind that not every RAM is compatible with every platform. This is DDR2, and on the AMD platform, there was some issue before about certain RAM which was compatible with AMD would not be compatible with Intel, and vice versa, I think. So you also got to make sure you got the right compatible RAM. You know, that can be a problem. And lastly, when it comes to the motherboard, don't assume that because they are both LGA775 socket that the processor you're using has to work on each board. That's not true, especially like these two are different manufacturers and different versions as well. But we were lucky because I know they both do support it, and the best way to do this is to check with the manufacturer's website whether the motherboard you're using actually supports the processor you're testing, because don't make that assumption, okay? Right. So I think that's about it, and yeah, well, this was part 3 of the Troubleshoot series, and I do apologize about the kind of rough style on this time, but I'm trying not to let me to be too perfect. I know none of my videos are perfect, but you know, they do hold me back trying to get information out to you, and I think it's far more important for you to have this information than me trying to do a more flashy, you know, production and edit. Also, what was I was going to say? Yeah, we're going to continue the Troubleshoot series, and the next part is going to be part 4, and we're going to be dealing with processor and all the problems that can come with having the wrong or a dying or a dead processor. So hopefully that should be coming up. Okay, do let me know your thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed this kind of a real one-shot, one-cut video. I'm not a great, you know, natural speaker, and I do tend to need to prepare my videos usually, but I thought I'd give this a try, otherwise you won't get this video until much later. Right. Okay, so that's the end of today's video. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Give me a like or a dislike and leave me a comment down below. Please also share this video to all those who you think might benefit from it. And consider subscribing to the channel. It does help me. Once again, thank you, because I just reached over 10,000 subscribers. Woohoo! And I want to take it further. And yeah, and that's it. So, thank you so much for watching. This was Ash from My Tech, helping you go from newbie to techie. Leave me questions below if you have any. Until next time, peace out.